They tell you to express yourself. They tell you to speak your truth, to show what you feel, to never hold back. But what they don't tell you is that emotions, once exposed, stop belonging to you. The moment you show what you feel, you give someone else the power to decide what that feeling means. You hand them the keys to your internal world. And most people will not use that power with care. They will use it to control you. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Those who rule their emotions rule their world. Those who reveal them become ruled by others. There is an invisible hierarchy in every social exchange, a quiet war of perception, and the weapon that decides victory is control, not control over others. That's secondary. It's control over yourself. Because the one who can stay calm while everyone else reacts holds the highest ground. The one who can feel anger and not display it, feel rejection and not seek validation, feel disappointment and not broadcast it, stands in a position of quiet authority that others cannot decode. That unreadability, that calm surface masking an ocean of restraint, is what gives birth to true power. Have you ever noticed how the most respected people rarely show what they feel? It's not because they lack emotion. It's because they understand what emotion is, a currency, and only fools spend it carelessly. Every time you express frustration publicly, you teach people what can break you. Every time you show jealousy, you expose what you fear losing. Every time you overreact, you broadcast your inner chaos to those who will one day use it against you. Control doesn't mean indifference. It means knowing that your emotions are sacred data, and only those who've earned your trust deserve to see them. The world interprets emotion as weakness, not because emotion is weak, but because most people cannot handle it without losing composure. They interpret calmness as strength, not because calmness is cold, but because it's rare. The person who stays still while others panic becomes magnetic, even if they say nothing. That's why emotional control isn't repression, it's selection. You choose what the world gets to see, and by doing so you maintain psychological territory. Emotional transparency is a modern illusion, born from the idea that authenticity means exposure. But real authenticity isn't about showing everything. It's about showing only what reinforces your power, your peace, and your direction. People respect those who stay grounded while others drown in their reactions. You've probably felt it, that quiet authority someone carries without needing to assert it. They speak less, observe more, and when they finally move, everyone pays attention. That's not luck, it's discipline. They've learned the sacred art of emotional economy, spending emotion only where it multiplies their strength. The rest, they keep. Controlled emotion creates mystery, and mystery creates value. When people can't read you, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they have to respect you. But here's the deeper layer. Emotional control isn't about suppressing feeling, it's about owning the moment before reaction, the pause between what happens and how you respond. That small, invisible fraction of a second is where your entire power lives. That's where leaders separate from followers, masters from reactors, because emotions are impulses. Control is intelligence applied to those impulses. When you learn to sit with your emotions, not run from them or display them impulsively, you become the authority of your own internal world. And that authority radiates outward. Others feel it without knowing why. They just sense that your calm isn't fake, it's earned. It's the calm of someone who has seen chaos and chosen not to become it. Imagine the difference between two people in an argument. One yells, gestures, defends, over-explains. The other listens, breathes, and responds with precision. The first one feels expressive, the second feels powerful. Why? Because in silence, emotion transforms into energy, and energy, when directed, commands respect. When you don't show what you feel immediately, you create psychological distance. That distance makes people curious. They begin to project. They wonder what you're thinking, what you'll do next, what you feel. That uncertainty gives you control. The less they know, the more they imagine. And what they imagine is often far greater than the reality. That's the paradox of power. You gain more influence by revealing less. You don't need to convince people you're strong. You only need to appear unshaken. In a world addicted to emotional exposure, restraint becomes a superpower. People post every thought, every feeling, every wound, hoping to connect, but in truth, they dilute their essence. The more you show, the less you're worth. The more predictable your emotions, the easier you are to manipulate. But when you choose calm over reaction, peace over explanation, detachment over desperation, you confuse those who thrive on chaos. They can't find your buttons. They can't read your next move. And in that confusion, they start to respect you, even fear you. Control doesn't mean you don't care. It means you refuse to let others dictate the timing and volume of your emotion. You may feel everything deeply, but you show it deliberately. You respond strategically. You let silence do the work your words cannot. Because silence forces people to confront their own emotions instead of feeding off yours. It's not cruelty. It's balance. It's the ability to stand firm in the storm without advertising the wind inside you. That's what separates the reactive from the powerful. The reactive need validation. The powerful need clarity. The reactive explain, the powerful observe. The reactive feel exposed, the powerful feel composed. Emotional control is not about denying your humanity. It's about protecting it from being consumed by others' chaos. When you stop showing what you feel impulsively, you regain the ability to see clearly. Emotions, when uncontrolled, blur perception, but when disciplined, they sharpen it. You start to see patterns others miss. You begin to recognize manipulation disguised as kindness, pity disguised as power, attention disguised as respect. Control gives you vision, and vision gives you freedom. But here's the hardest part: maintaining control when you crave expression, when your ego wants to prove something, when your pride wants to fight back, when your heart wants to confess. That's the battlefield. Not the outside world, but the inner one. To show control when every nerve wants to react, that's real mastery. Because power isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to choose when and how to use it. Every feeling you hide isn't lost, it's refined. It becomes energy, composure, a presence that others feel without words. When you learn to hold your emotion, you hold your power. You no longer chase closure, you create it. You no longer explain your worth, you embody it. You no longer demand respect, your silence commands it. Most people mistake silence for submission, but silence in the hands of the emotionally disciplined is domination. It's the sound of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. Control isn't the suppression of feeling, it's the elevation of it. It's turning pain into precision, disappointment into direction, love into patience. When you master that transformation, nothing external can unbalance you for long. You become the calm in every storm, not because the storm is gone, but because you've learned that reacting is what feeds it. The one who stays centered becomes the anchor others look to when the world shakes. And when you're the anchor, you don't beg for attention. Attention finds you. The irony is that those who seem emotionally cold often care the deepest. They've just learned to protect their warmth. They've been burned by giving too much of their truth to those who only wanted to feel powerful for a moment. Now, their silence isn't distance, it's discernment. They choose who gets access. Because in a world where everyone wants to read you, your unreadability becomes your protection. So the next time you feel the urge to show your emotion too quickly, pause. Remember, the more you reveal, the more control you lose. The less you reveal, the more control you gain. And control in this chaotic world is peace. Not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of understanding that not every emotion deserves an audience. Some emotions are meant to be mastered, not displayed. When you realize that, you stop reacting to the world and start directing it. You stop seeking validation and start radiating authority. You stop being an open book and become a mystery worth studying. Power isn't in showing how you feel. It's in showing that you're in control of how you feel. And that is the essence of composure. That's the signal of mastery. That's the truth that separates the ones who lead from the ones who follow their impulses. Emotional control isn't natural. It's earned through pain, through loss, through reflection. It's born in silence, in those long nights where you could have exploded but chose restraint instead. That's where real strength is built, not in expression, but in transformation. Don't show what you feel. Show that you've understood what your feelings mean. That's what makes others respect you, even if they don't know why. Because control, when genuine, radiates. It doesn't shout. It vibrates in the air around you like a signal only the wise can recognize. And once you've tasted that kind of power, you'll never go back to being reactive again. You'll protect it because you'll know calm is not emptiness, it's control. Control is not something you inherit. It's something you carve out of chaos. It begins when you realize that emotions are not instructions. They are signals. And signals are meant to be read, not obeyed. Most people never reach this understanding. They let their emotions dictate their behavior, mistaking movement for meaning. But the one who learns to interpret emotion without submitting to it becomes untouchable. When you understand why you feel, you become free from what you feel. This is where the true game begins, not on the surface, where reactions collide, but in the invisible space within you, where decisions are made in silence. The controlled mind doesn't deny emotion, it examines it. It looks at anger and asks, what triggered this? It looks at envy and asks, what desire does this reveal? It looks at fear and asks, what illusion am I protecting? Every emotion hides data, and most people waste it by expressing instead of decoding. They want relief, not revelation. But the disciplined person endures the discomfort because they know pain has information. When you learn to sit with your pain long enough, it starts talking. It shows you your insecurities, your attachments, your illusions. And once you understand those, you stop being their puppet. Control isn't coldness, it's consciousness. It's the awareness that not every impulse deserves expression. The world teaches you to react fast, to prove your feelings are real by displaying them. But the wise know that the louder the reaction, the weaker the position. Silence isn't absence. It's a signal that your emotions no longer control your actions. To reach that level, you must unlearn the addiction to immediacy. Because control is built in the delay, that moment between stimulus and response where your power lives. Every delay is a test. Can you pause when your pride is attacked? Can you breathe when your ego burns for revenge? Can you stay silent when you're misunderstood? These are not moments of weakness, they are rites of passage. The people who fall apart when misjudged reveal that their identity depends on others' perceptions. But when your sense of self is rooted in inner clarity, not outer validation, their misunderstanding becomes irrelevant. Control means seeing reality as it is, not as your emotions paint it. When you master that, you stop being reactive and start being strategic. You begin to play life like a chess game, where every emotional reaction is a move. Some win, most lose. The reactive player always loses to the calm strategist because anger blinds the board. Control lets you see 10 moves ahead. And the irony is that most people will call you emotionless for being disciplined. They'll say you don't care. But caring and reacting are not the same. Caring is energy aligned with purpose. Reacting is energy hijacked by impulse. Control allows you to care intelligently. It lets you choose your battles, your words, your silences. It makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. The emotionally stable person becomes a mirror that reflects others' instability. People project their emotions onto you, expecting reaction, and when none comes, they confront themselves. That's the psychological reversal. Your control forces others to see their lack of it. They start explaining themselves to you. They start trying to read your silence. They start trying to regain the balance that your calmness stole. This is how control shifts dynamics without aggression. You don't dominate by force. You dominate by not being moved. When you remain calm in emotional chaos, you become the gravitational center of the interaction. Everyone else orbits your stability. People mistake power for dominance, but the truth is subtler. Power is composure under pressure, because when everything is shaking, the still one looks divine. And the stillness of a controlled mind isn't emptiness. It's focus. You feel deeply, but you choose deliberately. You could express rage, but you channel it into strategy. You could beg for attention, but you turn it into presence. You could collapse in emotion, but you stand taller in silence. Control makes you efficient. Emotion without control scatters energy. Control gathers it. That's why the most magnetic people seem to move slower, speak less, and think deeper. They conserve energy by eliminating noise. They don't argue to prove. They wait to understand. They don't explain themselves endlessly, because explanation is the opposite of control. Once you start explaining, you've already lost the frame. The controlled mind doesn't seek to be understood. It seeks to understand. Because the moment you need others to validate your emotions, you've traded self-mastery for approval. But when you are content with your own understanding, others' confusion becomes meaningless. This is where detachment begins. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of perspective. You learn that emotions are weather, not identity. They come, they go, but you remain. You stop saying, "I am angry," and start saying, "I feel anger." That one linguistic shift rewires your power. Because feelings are temporary, identity is not. When you detach from emotion, you don't become numb. You become the observer. You rise above the storm and watch it instead of drowning in it. Observation creates control. When you observe, you stop reacting. When you stop reacting, you start influencing. Because control isn't about changing others, it's about changing your internal chemistry first. Your body will always want to react. Your ego will always want to respond. But your awareness decides whether you obey. This decision, repeated daily, becomes your discipline. And discipline is the architecture of control. Without it, emotion builds and destroys everything you touch. With it, emotion becomes your servant, not your master. The truly powerful person doesn't suppress emotion, they harness it. They turn anger into drive, sadness into depth, jealousy into self-reflection, fear into strategy. That's why they seem calm, not because they feel less, but because they've learned to direct what they feel toward purpose. Most people think control means being robotic, but control is actually emotional alchemy, turning chaos into clarity. The controlled person still feels everything. They just don't let feelings dictate their timing. Timing is everything in power. Show emotion too soon and you seem weak. Show it too late and you seem cold. But reveal it deliberately when it aligns with your goals. And it becomes persuasion. People follow those who manage emotion, not those who display it. Because emotion, when disciplined, communicates authority. That's why the quiet ones lead the loud ones. They express less, but influence more. Because expression without timing is noise. Expression with purpose is power. So you must ask yourself, who controls your emotions right now? You or the world? Does someone's silence disturb you? Does someone's opinion shape your peace? If so, your control is still external. True control begins when no one's approval or rejection alters your inner state. When you no longer need a reaction to feel real. That's emotional sovereignty. It's rare because it's expensive. You pay for it with ego, pride, and comfort. You lose the temporary high of emotional expression, but gain the permanent peace of emotional control. And once you experience that peace, you realize most of the world lives enslaved by their impulses, chasing validation, reacting to criticism, drowning in drama. Control frees you from that. You become the calm observer of human theater, playing your role with precision, but never forgetting that it's all performance. You no longer get trapped in other people's emotional weather. You create your own climate, silent, stable, deliberate. And from that stillness, you begin to see through everything. You see that anger is fear with armor. You see that jealousy is admiration with shame. You see that sadness is attachment resisting truth. When you see that, you don't fight emotions anymore. You understand them. Understanding dissolves reactivity. It turns pain into wisdom. It gives you something stronger than happiness. It gives you peace. And peace in a world addicted to noise is the ultimate sign of control. It's what makes others lean in when you speak. It's what gives weight to your words. It's what separates the calm strategist from the emotional reactor. When you understand the psychology of your own emotions, you gain access to a secret language, the one spoken by the powerful throughout history, the language of timing, silence, and selection. It's not about manipulation, it's about alignment, aligning what you feel with what serves you. And once you've aligned, emotion becomes an instrument, not an enemy. You don't eliminate it, you play it masterfully, quietly, with precision, and the world will hear your silence louder than your noise, because in silence, your control speaks. The moment you master your emotions, the world begins to revolve differently around you. People start reacting to your calmness with fascination, sometimes with fear. It's not something you do consciously. It's something they feel. Your silence, your restraint, your control, these things carry weight. They create gravity. Because the human mind is addicted to reaction, it expects it, feeds on it, searches for it constantly. When you withhold that reaction, you disrupt the script that others rely on to feel in control. And in that disruption, you become powerful. Power in its purest form is not about domination or status. It's about influence without effort, the quiet pull that comes from being centered while others are scattered. Think of how people respond to uncertainty. They panic, overthink, seek attention, fill the void with words. But you stand still. You don't chase clarity, you embody it. And that stillness makes others adjust to your rhythm. That is composure in motion, psychological dominance expressed through calm presence. You don't have to speak loudly to be heard. You don't have to prove your worth. You simply exist with a kind of balance that others crave. They start to study you. They wonder why nothing seems to shake you. And in that wondering, you occupy their thoughts. That is the hidden mechanism of attraction, not in appearance but in emotional mystery. People are drawn to what they can't fully read. The unpredictable mind is magnetic because it invites imagination. When they can't predict your emotional state, they start projecting. They imagine what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what your silence means. And the truth is, they'll always imagine more than what's real. Their imagination amplifies your presence far beyond what words could do. That's the paradox. When you stop trying to be understood, people start trying to understand you. And in that chase for meaning, they become emotionally invested in your composure. This is why restraint is not detachment. It's invitation. It's how you create emotional curiosity without ever losing self-respect. The calm person doesn't chase connection. They allow it to form naturally around their gravity. Every silence, every pause, every unspoken reaction becomes an unanswerable question in others' minds. And questions create attention. People lose interest in what they fully understand. But they can't stop thinking about what they can't define. That's why mystery holds more power than explanation. The moment you explain yourself, the moment you justify, you dissolve that mystery. You become ordinary again, readable, predictable, controllable. But when you stay composed, when you let others fill in the blanks, they build their own image of you, one that often exceeds reality. They'll assume depth where there's restraint, wisdom where there's silence, strength where there's calm. You don't have to correct them. You don't have to add anything. Let their projections serve you. This is not deceit. It's mastery of perception. The world runs on perception, and perception bends to composure. In any social environment, a negotiation, a relationship, a conflict, the calm one always holds the power. Because emotion is leverage, and the one who reveals less always has more to negotiate with. Think about the last argument you witnessed. The one who lost control first, lost influence immediately. Their anger might have felt powerful in the moment, but it exposed insecurity. The calm one, even if they said less, controlled the outcome. Because control communicates certainty, and certainty is what people follow. Even in love, composure transforms dynamics. When you don't show desperation, you create desire. When you don't chase attention, you attract it. People can feel when your emotions are self-contained. It signals that your sense of worth doesn't depend on their approval. That autonomy is intoxicating. It tells others that you are whole without them, and paradoxically, that's what makes them want to be near you. Emotional control creates a subtle tension, the tension of the unknown, and tension is the birthplace of fascination. The more composed you are, the more others lean in to sense what's behind that composure. They begin to mirror your pace. Your calmness becomes contagious, not because they understand it, but because they crave its stability. People trust what feels grounded. They distrust what feels chaotic. When you control your emotions, you become an anchor, and everyone around you, consciously or not, wants to hold on to that anchor. They feel safer in your presence, even if they can't explain why. But the power of composure is not just about attraction, it's about command. Command over situations, over rooms, over outcomes. In chaos, people instinctively look for a leader. The leader is not the loudest. The leader is the one who remains unfazed. Calmness reads as competence. Emotional control reads as intelligence. That's why in every crisis, the composed person becomes the center of gravity. Others orient themselves around their stability. This is how influence is established, not through words, but through energy management. You don't dominate others. You regulate yourself so precisely that others regulate themselves in response. You set the emotional tone by refusing to be consumed by the environment. You decide the temperature of every room you enter. And once you realize this, you stop wasting energy trying to convince people of your value. You simply become the example of control in a world drowning in reaction. That's all the persuasion you'll ever need. But there's a deeper side to this power, the solitude that comes with it. Emotional control often isolates you because fewer people can match your composure. Many will misread it. Some will call you distant, cold, mysterious. They will try to provoke emotion from you just to prove you're human. They want to see you react because your silence reminds them of their lack of it. Don't fall into the trap. The moment you break composure to prove you feel, you lose the power that made them curious in the first place. Let them wonder. Let them project. Let them misunderstand. Because your control isn't a performance. It's protection. It's not about hiding your emotions. It's about not letting others weaponize them. The moment you reveal too much, you surrender your leverage. But the moment you reveal nothing until you decide to, you become sovereign. And sovereignty is magnetic. People can't manipulate what they can't predict. They can't disrespect what they can't affect. And they can't forget the presence that never begged to be remembered. That's the paradox of composure. The less you try to impress, the more unforgettable you become. Because calmness creates contrast, and contrast is visibility. When everyone else is emotional, the controlled person stands out effortlessly. You don't compete for attention. Attention comes to you. Not because you demand it, but because you've mastered something most people never will. Yourself. In silence, you're loud. In restraint, you're powerful. In control, you're free. That's what draws people. The silent confidence that comes from knowing you cannot be easily moved. And that's the truth that changes everything. People don't respect emotion. They respect control over emotion. They don't trust intensity. They trust composure. They don't remember who reacted. They remember who remained unshaken. When you reach this level, you realize that composure is not the absence of emotion. It's the refinement of it. It's emotion distilled into presence. Every glance, every movement, every word carries authority because it's deliberate. That's why the truly powerful speak slowly, move intentionally, and never rush to respond. They let silence fill the air, knowing that in that silence, their control speaks louder than anything they could say. The magnetic power of composure is not built overnight. It's forged in restraint, in patience, in moments when reacting would have felt easier, but weaker. You start noticing how calmness changes outcomes. You see how people start treating you differently, with caution, with curiosity, with respect. That's the hidden reward of emotional control. Influence without effort, dominance without aggression, attraction without pursuit. You become the standard. You set the tone. You lead without asking. And when others finally realize that your composure was never about being detached, it was about being disciplined, they'll begin to understand that what they mistook for coldness was the purest form of power. Because control, at its core, is not about suppressing what you feel. It's about mastering when to reveal it. Timing is everything, and composure is the art of perfect timing. The calm you see on the surface is not effortless. It's built in silence, in struggle, in the moments no one sees, when emotion screams inside you, and you still choose restraint. Control is not natural. It's trained, like a muscle. It's developed through resistance, through failure, through the unbearable urge to react and the decision not to. Every time you hold yourself back from overreacting, over-explaining, over-confessing, you build that muscle. You build a kind of strength that doesn't show in your body but in your energy. It's invisible, but people feel it. They feel it in your stillness, in the way you don't flinch when challenged, in the way you look at chaos and remain composed. That inner control, that quiet endurance, is the rarest form of discipline, because the battle is not with others, it's with yourself. It's with the storm inside you that wants to escape, to prove, to explode, and the mastery lies not in suppressing it, but in holding it, refining it, transforming it. Think of every emotion like a fire. The undisciplined mind throws that fire outward. It burns relationships, opportunities, peace. The disciplined mind keeps that fire contained and uses it to create light, not destruction. That's what composure really is, internal energy under control. When you learn to contain that fire, you become a source of warmth, not chaos. People begin to feel safe around you, even if they don't know why. Because your energy doesn't spill, it's focused. And focused energy always commands respect. But to reach that level, you must face yourself brutally. Emotional control requires self-awareness, and self-awareness begins with honesty. You can't control what you refuse to see. You have to confront the truth of your own patterns, how you react when you feel ignored, how you behave when you feel disrespected, how your ego hides behind explanations. Every reaction is a mirror showing you where you're still not free. That's why the path to control is lonely, not because you isolate from others, but because you stop running from yourself. You start sitting in silence long enough to hear your own mind. And that silence is uncomfortable at first. You start noticing how often your emotions demand validation. You notice how much of your energy is spent proving something to people who don't even understand you. You start realizing that your need to express emotion was never about truth. It was about control. You wanted others to see, to feel, to react. But once you understand that, you begin to reclaim that power. You stop chasing reaction and start mastering response. The discipline of control is built in these micro-decisions. When you receive criticism and don't defend yourself, when you feel jealousy and don't act on it, when you're provoked and don't retaliate. Each time you resist, you rewire your nervous system. You teach your mind that survival doesn't depend on reaction, that peace is stronger than ego. And slowly, you begin to feel something new. Not the rush of emotional release, but the quiet satisfaction of dominance over self. That's the shift that changes everything. You start valuing stillness more than expression. You start realizing that not everything deserves your energy, that not every thought deserves a response, that not every feeling deserves exposure. The disciplined mind lives in that understanding, that you don't owe your emotions to anyone. You owe them to yourself first, to process them, understand them, and decide if they deserve an audience. This is emotional minimalism. You give less, but what you give means more. Because control doesn't eliminate emotion, it concentrates it. Your emotions become rarer, more deliberate, more powerful when they appear. People notice because your silence gives meaning to your words. They know you don't speak to fill space, you speak to shift energy. But the path to this level of control requires sacrifice. You must let go of your addiction to being understood. You must release your craving for emotional validation. You must detach from the illusion that showing emotion equals connection. Real connection doesn't come from shared chaos. It comes from mutual stability. And the more you master yourself, the more you attract those who are equally grounded. But before that, control isolates you, because discipline always isolates the one who practices it among those who don't. You'll start to see the world differently. You'll notice how most people live on emotional autopilot, reacting, posting, defending, proving. You'll see how easily people give away their peace for the illusion of being right, and you'll begin to value something else entirely, composure as a currency of power. You'll realize that in every interaction, the one with the calmest nervous system wins, not because they're superior, but because they can think clearly when others can't. Calmness is clarity, and clarity is control. The world rewards clarity, not chaos. That's why discipline becomes your secret advantage. It makes you patient when others are impulsive. It makes you deliberate when others are careless. It makes you emotionally invincible, because nothing external determines your internal state anymore. You stop being reactive to life and start being responsive, intentional, measured, composed. And this discipline is not rigidity, it's flexibility under control. You bend without breaking. You feel deeply but stay centered. You adapt but never lose yourself. That's what separates emotional control from repression. Control bends emotion into usefulness. Repression ignores it until it explodes. The disciplined person doesn't deny emotion. They direct it. They let it move through them without letting it rule them. It's not coldness and it's containment. It's knowing that your emotions are like waves, powerful, temporary, and meaningless unless guided by purpose. The one who rides the wave rules the tide. The one who fights it drowns. That's why control feels powerful. It's not about avoiding emotion, but mastering the motion of it. You feel the anger, but you wait. You feel the sadness, but you analyze. You feel the urge to speak, but you hold until your words become sharp enough to pierce, not scatter. That's mastery. And this mastery, once developed, leaks into everything you do. You start moving differently, slower but with intention. You stop rushing decisions. You stop explaining things twice. You stop needing constant reassurance. You walk with the quiet confidence of someone who owns their reactions. That is the mark of discipline. Your calm becomes your armor. Your silence becomes your weapon. Your restraint becomes your magnetism. People can sense when you're unbothered by chaos. They can sense when your emotions are under your command. It unsettles them, because most people's emotions command them. They'll test you, provoke you, try to make you react, not because they hate you, but because they're curious about your stability. They want to see if it's real. Never give them what they seek. The moment you react, you return to their level. The moment you stay calm, you remain above it. Every reaction is a transaction. You either pay with your peace or you keep it. Choose wisely, because the disciplined mind doesn't chase battles that compromise composure. It understands that not responding is also a response, one that holds far more weight. Silence is never empty. It's a form of communication that only the self-controlled understand. The discipline behind emotional control is a lifestyle, not a moment. It's a daily decision to stay aligned with your purpose, not your impulses. It's waking up every day and choosing clarity over noise, peace over validation, direction over drama. And over time, that discipline becomes identity. You no longer need to force calm, you become it. You no longer need to pretend confidence, you embody it. That's the transformation, when control stops being effort and becomes essence. You've trained yourself so well that calm becomes your default. You stop performing it, you live it. And when you reach that level, no one can shake you. Not rejection, not praise, not loss, not desire. You become grounded, centered, immovable. You no longer show what you feel, because what you feel is no longer chaos, it's clarity. That's when you realize that emotional control is not a restriction, it's freedom. It's not the death of feeling, it's the rebirth of direction. And that freedom is something most will never know, because it demands the hardest form of discipline, mastering the self. There comes a moment when emotional control is no longer something you practice. It becomes who you are. It stops feeling like restraint and starts feeling like alignment. You no longer fight your emotions. You understand them so deeply that they no longer surprise you. You watch them rise, observe their shape, their rhythm, their temperature, and then you decide what to do with them. You stop being the storm, and you become the sky. The storm passes through, but you remain untouched. That is the final form of control, when your emotions no longer dictate your energy, when people's actions no longer shift your center, when chaos can unfold around you, and yet you move through it like water, fluid but never broken. At that level, control is not tension, it's peace. It's a state of being that radiates authority without aggression, confidence without arrogance, presence without performance. People sense it the moment you enter a room. They can't explain it, but they feel it. That quiet assurance, that invisible boundary, that energy that says, I am not easily moved. It's the kind of energy that makes others check themselves before speaking too freely, the kind that silences noise without demanding silence. That's the aura of someone who's mastered themselves. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's calm, deliberate, unbothered. You've spent so long refining your emotional reactions that your presence now speaks louder than any emotion could. You don't need to show what you feel. Your control reveals what you've become. You've transformed emotion from chaos into command, and that transformation changes the way life treats you. People start mirroring your composure. Situations that once drained you now unfold in your favor. Because energy follows structure, and your structure is stable. You've built internal order in a disordered world, and that makes you magnetic. You start to realize how much energy you used to waste on reaction, on proving, explaining, defending. You look back at old versions of yourself and almost smile. The one who needed to express everything, who believed that vulnerability meant exposure, who thought silence was weakness. Now you know better. You've learned that silence is selective strength, the ability to choose peace over performance. That's what most never understand. Control is not about hiding your truth, it's about protecting its power. When you share less, you conserve energy. And when you conserve energy, you move with precision. The controlled person doesn't fight unnecessary battles because they've learned to separate emotion from impulse. They don't let temporary feelings cause permanent damage. They don't give power to what doesn't serve them. They know that peace is expensive, and control is how you afford it. You begin to see that people who react emotionally to everything are constantly broke in peace. They spend it everywhere, on arguments, validation, pride. But you've learned to invest your peace, to hold it, to let it grow. That's why emotional control feels like wealth. It's spiritual wealth, mental wealth, energetic wealth. It gives you space between feeling and action, and in that space, you find freedom. Freedom from the need to explain. Freedom from the compulsion to react. Freedom from the illusion that people's opinions define your truth. When you live from that place, you stop chasing control. You embody it. It becomes visible in how you breathe, how you move, how you decide. You no longer chase outcomes, you guide them. You no longer chase people, you attract them. You no longer chase peace, you carry it. And people notice. They start coming to you for clarity, for reassurance, for guidance. Not because you speak loudly, but because your presence calms their noise. You've become the quiet in a world that never stops talking. That quiet is irresistible. Because deep down everyone wants peace, but few have the discipline to earn it. You did. You endured the inner storms. You faced your emotions without running. You stopped showing what you felt before understanding it. You stopped giving everyone access to your heart. You started listening more than speaking, observing more than reacting, and suddenly you became powerful without even trying. The world will call you mysterious, they'll call you distant, they'll call you unreadable. But what they're really feeling is their own lack of control when they stand before yours. You'll learn not to correct them, let them project, let them wonder. Because part of your control is knowing that understanding is not your responsibility. You don't need to be understood, you only need to remain aligned. And alignment doesn't seek approval. It creates respect. Emotional control turns you into someone who no longer operates on other people's timelines. You move when it makes sense, not when you're provoked. You speak when it matters, not when you're triggered. You disappear when peace demands it, not when pride does. That's when control becomes identity. When your peace decides your presence. You stop showing what you feel not because you're numb, but because you've outgrown the need for emotional validation. You've discovered the quiet satisfaction of composure. You've realized that control is not about appearing strong, it's about being unshakable. You can love deeply, but never lose yourself in love. You can care deeply but never abandon your peace. You can feel pain but never let it define your path. That's the ultimate freedom, to feel everything and still remain in control. And once you reach it, everything changes. You become immune to emotional manipulation. You stop being addicted to reaction. You start valuing peace more than being right, calm more than victory, silence more than validation. You start noticing that the less you show, the more others reveal. The less you react, the more others expose themselves. Your calmness becomes a mirror, one that reflects everyone's chaos back to them. They will either rise to your level or fall away. Either way, your peace remains untouched. You've become your own standard. You've become the quiet authority that people sense but can't define. You've become the living embodiment of power through control. And in that realization, you find something deeper than dominance, serenity. Because real power isn't about being above others. It's about being above reaction. It's about reaching the point where your inner state no longer depends on the outer world. You don't control others. You control yourself so completely that the world aligns to your energy. That's the secret of calm dominance. You move less, but everything around you adjusts. You speak less, but everything you say matters. You reveal less, but everyone feels your presence. You've turned silence into language, restraint into magnetism, peace into power. And that is what people can't imitate. They can copy your style, your tone, your confidence, but not your control. Because control isn't an act. It's earned in silence, in solitude, in the unseen moments of discipline that no one applauds. It's not glamorous, but it's rare. And what's rare is always valuable. The truth is, anyone can show emotion. Few can master it. Anyone can react. Few can remain still. Anyone can speak. Few can say nothing and still be heard. That's why control is the highest form of strength. It's strength refined into elegance. It's power that doesn't need performance. So don't show what you feel. Show that you've evolved beyond the need to be seen to know your worth. Show that peace is your power. Show that control is your nature. Because in a world addicted to reaction, your restraint will echo louder than any outburst ever could. It will speak for you, define you, and protect you. And when people finally ask why your silence feels so powerful, you'll know the answer. Because silence isn't the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. Silence isn't emptiness. It's depth. Silence isn't weakness. It's control. If this truth resonates, it's because you've already started to wake up, subscribe, and learn the power that others fear.